Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about something really exciting and topical, and that is what it takes to get hired in AI security. Now, the reason that this is exciting content for you is for a number of reasons. There are lots of companies now hiring in AI security. And the reason that this topic is exciting for me is because I am now hiring in AI security. Or rather, at the moment, I have realized that, over the 3 years that I've been building my company, initially it was quite hard because the AI security market didn't really exist. However, over the last 6 months, people have actually been coming to me because they have AI security problems. And one of the biggest challenges is that there isn't necessarily a pool of people that I can call on. And people do often reach out to me and ask for, tips or what kinds of jobs are going, or they ask for different kinds of work. So I thought it'd be interesting to do at least one video, I might make this a two-parter, on what it takes to get hired in AI security in terms of the kinds of skills you should have, certifications, previous work experience, and then also the kinds of roles that are available, and dispelling some of the rumors. For example, I often see people assume that working in AI security means that you're AI red teaming, and that's not always the case. And in fact, when it comes to the kind of work that I don't do any AI red teaming. So I want to make sure that all of you lovely people can get cool jobs in AI security, whatever that looks like for you. The other thing, I don't know if the focus really works, but have you noticed this very cool sign behind me? It says Harriet Hacks. This is step one in upgrading my studio situation. As you know, I'm often working on the road, so it's a little bit hard to have any sort of permanent studio, but I've been here in the UK for a few months now, so I decided to finally invest in a really cool neon sign. I also was at a rave last night, so if I'm a little bit tired, you can blame that. The UK is definitely pretty fun in some ways compared to Australia. First of all, before we get into the content, it would really help me if you could like, subscribe, comment. I try my best to respond to all of your comments. And it really helps because I spend a lot of time working to raise awareness in AI security, and so many more people need to be able to understand that AI security is important. So if you can help spread that message, that helps me out quite a lot. And it helps everyone too. Anyway, I always find it hard asking for people to like and subscribe, obviously. So let me move on. I'm going to be covering a few things today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about what AI security is. So maybe you're someone who's done a bit of training in AI security before, maybe you even have some light work experience and you're looking to go deeper. Or maybe you're totally new to it, you've just heard that AI security is this buzzword. I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through what kinds of jobs do exist in AI security. There's lots of different kinds of jobs. They're not all technical. They're not all, you don't always need to be an AI expert. You don't always need to be a security expert. There's a lot of intersection there. I'm going to talk a bit about what I've noticed when I'm hiring. So when I'm looking at resumes, when I'm interviewing people, I'll give you some top tips on how to put your best foot forward. And then I'll go through things like how to upskill to get to the point where you want to be going after your AI security job. I'll go through more informal hands-on upskilling. I'll go through certifications, courses, resume advice, and then some other questions like, is it worth doing a PhD, for instance, or what things are and aren't worth doing. Let me start off by framing this conversation. If you don't know me, so my name is Harriet Farlow. I run Australia's only dedicated AI security company and have been for the last 3 years. And last year we delivered the first AI security framework in an Australian government department outside of national security, and the first AI security training package that was mandatory in government. So we've done quite a lot of things that are firsts. In many ways that's exciting, in many ways it can be challenging, not just for me, but the people in my team, the people that we're looking to hire, because there isn't necessarily a template of the best sort of things to do or the right ways to get noticed, especially if you're looking for work. So let's start off with what is AI security? You can think of AI security as straddling that intersection between machine learning and cybersecurity. So the way that I often frame it is in terms of AI safety. So if you're thinking about all of the things that could go wrong when you're talking about artificial intelligence, whether those are more immediate risks like bias, misinformation, cyber attacks, or more existential risks, whether that's short term or long term, related to artificial intelligence systems potentially becoming misaligned with our values, being able to gain greater autonomy than we expect by updating themselves in some way, some emergent kinds of risks. We can really group all of those kinds of risks into whether the AI is doing something bad or whether someone is doing something bad to AI. I say someone, that could be an AI system too. So, AI security primarily looks at the second category. So, humans or AI trying to do bad things to AI. They could be manipulating AI or disrupting AI so it doesn't work as intended. They could be trying to deceive it in some way so it produces some kind of predetermined output that is, bad or wrong. They could be getting it to disclose some sort of sensitive or confidential data or information that it shouldn't be. That is AI security. That necessarily straddles something like machine learning, which is the discipline that underpins how artificial intelligence models work. It also straddles information systems at the system level. If you think about a machine learning model as being just one component of a greater AI system, that also includes lots of different things like data sources, APIs, cloud usage. That's the AI system. That's also really important, in addition to the model and the kinds of risks that emerge from that. And then related to that systems thinking, that's how we branch into cyber and information security, which primarily deals with ensuring that we have confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information in our digital systems, and ensuring that, bad actors can't disrupt that in some way. So the reason that that often can be a bit of a challenge from a job perspective is because you might be looking at, I don't know, a job that says that it's looking at something like technical alignment of artificial intelligence systems. What does that exactly mean? I mean, alignment implies some sort of safety mindset. You might hear technical and think that there's more of a cyber security flavor. There's a broad range of different kinds of job types, and sometimes cybersecurity jobs that include AI may not necessarily advertise that they are AI security. You might have to be looking specifically at cyber jobs to actually capture the kinds of jobs that you're going for. In general, some advice when you're thinking about what kinds of jobs are in fact the jobs that you're interested in is, first of all, I would encourage you to think more broadly than just AI security in terms of the discipline that you're aiming towards, and instead think about what it is that you're hoping to get out of that role. Because there are circumstances where you might end up in a role that is more safety flavored, but you get to achieve the same outcomes that you were hoping for in your role. You're making AI safer, you're making it more robust, you're still working with cool tooling, and there is always a way that you can sort of shift that into a more security flavored role over time, depending on where you're going. And likewise, you might end up in a more traditional cybersecurity role, but everyone is all incorporating artificial intelligence these days. You can brand yourself as the AI security expert, even in a traditional cybersecurity team or role, by understanding more about how AI systems work. But if you're looking at specifically getting hired in AI security, there are some roles that I've seen pop up, but in general, they sit at that intersection. So that's the first thing that I would look out for. Expand the kinds of job titles that you're looking for, and be willing to consider other kinds of roles that might not sound quite as specifically AI security as you were hoping. It'll be interesting to see how that changes over time. AI security is only becoming a much broader discipline. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk through is what kinds of jobs in AI security actually exist. So the first thing that people often think of when they think of an AI security role is something like AI red teaming. So this usually means that, well, first of all, I think there's a misconception when it comes to what red teaming is. A lot of people think that red teaming is just using prompt injection techniques and different models to try and have them do something bad or reveal some kind of information. Red teaming as a discipline is much broader than that. It involves a much more strategic campaign to emulate an adversary. And ideally, it doesn't just look at like a model, it looks at an entire system. So if you think about maybe you're red teaming a bank infrastructure, and that bank has many different kinds of information technology systems. They use third-party AI products, maybe they build their own models. A red teamer shouldn't come in and think, okay, how can I prompt inject this model to give information away? What they need to do is think about who would be attacking the bank. Maybe it's some sort of fraudster or scammer. What kinds of information are they looking for? It could be logs of big data sets of like personal records of people at the bank and ways that they might be able to get into those accounts. And then they would think about what is the most likely course of action an adversary is going to take to actually get that information. They're thinking from the perspective of like feasible attack pathways to get to those crown jewels. They're not thinking about what is the coolest way to hack this model. That's the first thing I would say. So there are roles in AI red teaming that I see pop up. They're available. Often these will be inside big companies that red team their own systems. Sometimes they will be boutique companies that provide those services for those other companies. Sometimes they will be more research oriented. So it might be on behalf of a government department, sort of research department, looking at vulnerabilities. I'm thinking something like the UK AC, for instance. Or it could be at an academic institution looking at model vulnerabilities. All those kinds of roles might be found in more traditional large consulting companies like a Deloitte or something, if they offer those kinds of services to their clients too. All of those different scenarios will change what that role looks like, and how, I guess, flexible it might be when you get to like how hands-on tools you are versus to what extent is it part of a really big bureaucratic style engagement. But that is AI red teaming. I mentioned before that my company doesn't actually do any AI red teaming. I personally am just not interested in language models. There are many other models that I find more interesting, so part of that is just personal preference. But often it's because my company's based in Australia, and I'm more inclined to see companies at the level of wanting to adopt enterprise AI products, but not necessarily be able to incorporate that into their larger governance framework. And that is not necessarily something that they would then need to red team. They're not creating those models themselves. They're not necessarily responsible at the model level. They're more responsible at the system level. So the kinds of work that we do is around things like operationalizing AI security frameworks. A lot of the time we see that companies might have some sort of AI ethics framework. They have a pretty good sort of governance level, but actually understanding what specific security controls they need to put in place to make sure that they are compliant with specific regional standards, specific industry standards, and that their cybersecurity team knows how to do that. That's usually the problem we see. So we'll come in, we'll understand, so we have our own sort of operational AI security frameworks, but then we might have to tailor them depending on if an organization works in a specific industry, like banking or government, because there are often other standards or compliance frameworks that they need to incorporate into that too. What that looks like in practice is that a person working on a project like that needs to have a really good understanding of both existing cybersecurity frameworks and artificial intelligence, but I would say it's probably more on the cybersecurity side. So those skills are really important to know. Specifically when it comes to what organizations actually have to do to get to that level. It's not a theoretical expertise. It's more about how do you do change management in an organization? You know, how do you get stakeholders on board? And how do you empathize with existing cybersecurity teams who might want nothing to do with AI, and meet them where they are and show them exactly how incorporating an AI security element into their existing processes is not a revolution, but it's more of a step change and just updating how they do things already. The other kind of work that we do is in training. There's a massive gap at the moment when it comes to how organizations are able to learn more about AI security. That's at both the practitioner and the executive level. So we spend a lot of work making sure that teams are empowered to be able to actually operationalize the framework over time, so it's ongoing, and if they need to update that framework and have the confidence to be able to do that without having to bring consultants in. There are also lots of roles in AI security companies that aren't necessarily in the security of AI. So this could be things like software engineers who are helping build products, people who work in policy and are able to shape the discourse around AI policy and what that looks like, people who do research in very deep niches in machine learning and or cybersecurity. Okay, I'm back. Apologies, everything ran out of battery at once. The camera, my mic. Anyway, so what I was about to say is that another really important role on the engineering side is specifically AI security engineering. So you can imagine that this is sort of a blend of DevSecOps, so secure development essentially, and machine learning. So it's things like securing machine learning operations pipelines, thinking about model version control, how to track that and how to manage it and secure it, guardrails and monitoring, logging prompt activity, preventing data leakage, and secure deployment architecture. So you are working around the machine learning model. You're not necessarily like a data scientist building models to be more secure, but you're implementing all of the system level constraints around how those models are operationalized and making sure that those are secure. So that's another really important role. There's obviously all sorts of intersections with other fields as well. So don't consider that like an exhaustive list, but you can consider those few main categories as some of the core AI security roles. So something that I notice when hiring, let's dive into this. I think a real challenge is that AI security hasn't been around for a very long time, so it's very hard to prove that you know what you're doing. But equally, the kinds of engagements that you're likely to end up in are also new. So necessarily, AI security is a field that bridges lots of other areas. So if I'm looking at resumes, I don't necessarily care if someone is an AI security expert, because that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot at this point. But what I do care is that they have deep enough knowledge in something adjacent: data science, machine learning, cybersecurity, operations, DevSecOps, and that they're willing to transfer or adapt some of that expertise into AI security. I think it could be really easy to want to accrue a lot of certifications and use that as a way of showing that you know what you're doing. And certifications are really helpful. Like, it's obviously important to know the theory, and a lot of them do have some practice as well. But if I'm looking at hiring someone, I really want to see that someone has taken that step beyond getting a certification and that they are actively doing something in AI security, even if it's not necessarily possible in their existing role. Are they pushing to be able to take on more responsibility or do some sort of additional project outside of their normal line of work? Are they contributing to open source materials in AI security? Sometimes it's hard. I know a lot of people in roles who can't necessarily publish stuff publicly, but if you're at least dedicated to doing something and you can talk well about it, that's really important. Obviously, I mean, generally in hiring, it's also very important that people are nice to work with. I'm not going to focus too much on that here because I know this is about AI security, but it is still really important that if you're a technical expert, you can still work as part of a team. Like, it doesn't mean that you need to be an extrovert and that you have to want to be around people all the time, but you have to be able to communicate well, manage feedback and difficult conversations, be a generally positive and respectful person in a team. I think there's quite a culture where technical people get to kind of be assholes because they are, so amazing at doing this particular thing, and that's just not something that I have in my workplace. I know that others do, and that's up to them. But all of those soft skills are really important too, especially because a lot of the work that I do, for example, is helping other people understand what they need to do with AI security. So that means that communicating, working with people, being empathetic, generally having a caring mindset towards people is actually very, very important. There are a bunch of certifications you can get in the AI security space now as well, which is really great. They're all quite new because AI security is new, so I've put them all in the description, along with a couple of, I guess, tips about who they're for. But like, I personally can't vouch for any of them. I've not taken any of them myself. I do know people who have though. So if you're interested in knowing a bit more about which kinds of certifications might be worth it, please let me know and I can do some more research. There are AI security courses out there. The thing I would note, and I mean, I obviously have one. I'm not intending to make this marketing or anything. One of the things I notice is the scope of what is included in AI security can really differ. Naturally, the kind of stuff that I teach is very much based around training someone who might want to work on the kinds of things that I work on. That's for a lot of reasons. That's because that's the gap that I work in. That's what I'm more experienced doing. And obviously that course then helps build a pipeline for me to be able to employ, and for them to be able to get access to jobs a bit easier. And so that means that it does tend to focus more on like technical methods in machine learning security attacks and defenses, and then transferring that into risk assessments, risk management, that kind of stuff. I do see other courses that tend to have a bit more of a red teaming flavor, more of a safety flavor, things that don't look at machine learning at all. So the reason that it's important to do a bit of your own research first is to make sure that if you're spending money on a course, it is aligned with what you actually want to be getting out of it. When it comes to more traditional education, I have seen a few universities start to offer courses in AI security as well. They tend to be packaged under like machine learning or cybersecurity, but those can be worth looking into. And something that people often ask me is, along the lines of, is it worth doing something like a PhD? Because I have a PhD in the field, or at least I've completed one, hasn't been awarded yet, but will be soon. The thing I would say is that it really depends again. A PhD can be worth it if you intend to work in research, or if, for me, it was an opportunity to upskill in an area I was interested in and then be recognized for that. But if you are someone who doesn't necessarily have the patience for conventional education, if you don't want to work in research, and if you're perfectly happy just applying skills that you've learned in the real world and don't care if you get to be a doctor, then probably getting a PhD isn't worth it. It's just a lot of time and effort. Again, it really depends on you. So I hope this has been helpful. I can go deeper into any of the topics you're talking about. I am interested to know for you, like my viewers / listeners, what kinds of AI security roles you're interested in, because I know that I have a viewership that's really varied. Some of you haven't really touched machine learning before. Some of you are AI people. Some of you are cybersecurity people. feel free to ask me some more targeted questions, and I can come back with some more specific advice as well. But I hope this has been helpful, and I hope to see you in an AI security role very soon. Bye.